So Vincent will actually find who the dog people are. Oh, are we live? Hey, welcome, folks. We're glad you're here.
Can you hear me now?
Today's class is gardening for newcomers. And so it's if you're new to the area, let's find out how many people, this is your very first garden season here in the area. Oh, well over half. Yeah, that's good. Great. You're in for some frustration, but that's how you learn gardening, right? You make mistakes. That's how you go, oh, don't do that. You come back, you just kind of get better and better at it. It's a little different here. And I've got some guest speakers some professional speakers.
Can you hear me now?
So.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. You turn the hearing aids up too. So.
I need to talk to you before we leave.
Anyway, how are we looking, Ken? Still okay? Good. So my name's Ken Lane. I am the owner of the Garden Center. I'm the second generation owner. So how does Ken Lane come to own Waters Garden Center? My father-in-law is Harold Waters. And so he had 4 daughters, and I married the youngest, and I think very much the prettiest daughter. So about 35 years ago. And so we've got 4 kids, and they've all worked in the Garden Center. I think I've got identical twin girls that are my youngest. They're both working in the Garden Center today. Our dog is here today. So it is a family business. And so our kids are positioning to take the 3rd generation and continue the legacy forward. So we are celebrating our 60th anniversary in business, March 11th, 12th, 13th, that weekend, the weekend right before spring. We've got a spring open house. Please come. It's kind of fun. All of our growers, the pandemic is over. Because for 2 years they've said, I'm not traveling, I'm not getting a car or plane to come just help you. So this year they said, we're all in, we'll bring stuff. And so the growers are coming in from the farms, the people that make the stuff, grow the things, they're all gonna be here. I mean, they'll be Saturday mainly. They're gonna feature some new plants, things that they're gonna show off, new for spring 2020. So it should be a hoot, it should be fun. 60 years, it's very unusual for a company to make 60 years, much less a small company. So Prescott was very small. I think there were only 12,000 people here back in 1962. Now it's all grown up, sort of, I guess. Hey, Vinny. So gardening for newcomers, I've got a guest speaker, Michelle Hyatt. She's one of our regular speakers. In fact, you're our longest running speaker other than myself for classes. She's been teaching for years. She runs basically this half of the Garden Center. So anything that blooms, herbs, vegetables, perennials, all that stuff, she directly controls. She grows it. She talks to farmers. She knows the rotations. If you want to know when the peonies are coming in, don't ask me. I'm just going to ask Michelle. But she knows stuff. And then Doug Arthur, he basically is the master gardener program for Yavapai County. So he writes the newsletter. He is a hardcore, very good designer. He's one of our main designers that goes out to your house and helps you figure out where to place trees, spacings and that kind of stuff. So, and they have not tagged team for a while.
Doug
Arthur. So, with that being said, let's give it up for, because I don't want to steal any of their thunder, for Doug and Michelle. There you go.
Well, Doug, mic's up. I want to welcome you to Prescott. If you guys have not tried to dig, or you're very, very new, it's a whole different situation. So basically forget everything you knew about gardening, because it's different here. We have high elevation, so our altitude is a big factor. We also have extreme temperatures, so we get really chilly in the winter and we get very warm in the summertime. So those are the main factors and the main differences of planting here. When you guys look at our nursery tags, they are printed for the entire country and not just for Prescott, Arizona. So a lot of things that'll say full sun might not actually grow in full sun here because of that altitude situation. A lot of the shady stuff tends to burn, or the stuff that we need in the shade will burn, will fry basically in your landscape if you put it in the full sun. So just be kind of careful. We have a very nice nice layout when we set up this nursery. We have shade sections and sunny sections, so we try to make it easier for you. We do put tags on things and sign. We do really well with the signage. We have great information on it, so you should be able to learn everything you need to know from those signs if you cannot find a person. But try to find one of us. That's what we're here for. Sometimes in the busy spring, we do get really crazy, so just be patient. It is a beautiful garden center. It's a great place to spend time, so definitely plan ahead so you do have time to spend with us.
So one of the, yes,
Yes, thank you.
one of the premises of today's class is that most of us probably learn to garden somewhere else. And that's great. Same with me. But it's different here. And the purpose of this class is to help all of you learn what's different before you delve into gardening and sort of learn by trial and error. So we'll talk about climate, soil, animals, sunshine, lack of humidity, all the factors that affect gardening here. That's part of what we'll talk about today. And we'll show you some examples and talk about best practices and also address your questions.
The sheets that I just passed out are for our handouts for this class. So if you guys have come to earlier classes, you do need to sign this page because they're very specific to this class. So make sure you sign up for each class if you want the handouts that come with it. Doug, you want to talk about our seasons?
Sure. So one of the things that's nice about Prescott, a lot of people, maybe they move from California or somewhere else, is that we definitely have 4 distinct seasons. That includes the winter, and it can get pretty cold in the winter. And so it's a seasonal sort of thing. Now, as an example, vegetables. Next month, we'll get warm weather, and gardeners will come in here. They've been, cooped up all winter. It's cold. They're ready to garden. And they'll say, "Where are the tomatoes? I want to plant them right now." Well, it's only 60 degrees and 30 at night, so you don't want to plant right now. But the gardening season, for example, the usual cutoff date for planting the summer vegetables is Mother's Day. So late May. Sometimes I even wait until June. So annuals and vegetables, don't start them until June. And ideally, what those plants want is a low temperature at night of 50 degrees or better. And it can be quite a while before that. We can have nice weather in April or May, 60, 70, and it can still be 40 at night. And the plants that we put in the ground may have difficulty surviving under those circumstances. So the 4 seasons that we have to pay attention to, if you haven't lived through a summer season with the monsoon rains, you're in for a real treat. And remember what I told them about?
Oh yeah, sure.
Several years ago, Michelle and I were over there on the other side of the building, and we were pruning some aspens. And all of a sudden, there was this huge thunder just blast right above us, and it just started raining immediately. So we came running in here for shelter, and within a few minutes, the water was streaming across, and the roof was just pounding. And down in the office, everybody had gone inside there. They called us up here and said, "Are you guys okay up there?" I said, "Yeah, we're okay, but we're sort of stuck up here unless we want to get soaked." But one of the things that's wonderful about the monsoons is that it nourishes our plants, especially our trees and our shrubs. The summer rain is great for those plants. And last summer, we've had so many years of drought, but July and August, it rained a lot. And I saw some of my trees really grow. I had roses that, had 50, 60 flowers on them in the middle of the summertime. So that's the big thing, and we can sort of work around that. We water our plants, but the water is usually, our tap water is kind of like the ground. It's alkaline. But the water that comes out of the sky is, much better for the plants.
Right. So we do have several growing seasons here. So right now, your cool season vegetables can start going in. Your kale, your beets, your sweet peas. All of this stuff can go in now. We have to be smart because we do have a snowstorm coming next week, obviously. So we'll see how much we actually get. Snow makes a great insulator. So if they get covered with snow, that works really well as an insulating blanket. But if you do lettuces and stuff, those tend to be the ones that are a little bit more delicate. So we do get 3 growing seasons here. So we have the cool season vegetables, the hot season vegetables that Doug mentioned, the tomatoes, your cucumbers, your watermelons, all of that stuff we put in May. And then we have another cool season time in the fall as well. So usually August, September, we can start growing this stuff again and actually get a crop before the November, December cold season hits. I planted beets last November and they're about that big. I mean, they don't grow a lot in the wintertime, but they don't die. My leaves are nice and tough and springy. And like I said, most of my beets are about that big right now. So I should be able to harvest them in March or April and we'll be ready to go.
And that can be before you put in the summer crops. So you'll have time to harvest, maybe amend the soil. But the fall season, which is, as Michelle mentioned, maybe September, October, Michelle orders so many leafy greens. You've got spinach and kale and all kinds of different lettuce. Last fall in October, I planted about 4 different kinds of lettuce, and early October, and I put up a stand where I could cover them with frost cloth, but it was okay for a while. And then it gets chilly, so if it was going to be 35 overnight, I would cover them, and I could open them up in the daytime, or if it was going to be sunny. But that lettuce was really productive. I'd go out there every couple days, and with 4 different kinds, I could just sort of pick them. Enough to make a salad that had a combination of lettuce. It was really great. My beets and I had some kale and spinach didn't do as well, but the lettuce did really well. It snowed, they were covered up. Then I think after a while, maybe near the end of the year, it gets kind of cold. It's freezing every night, and they don't, they kind of fizzle out a little bit. But October, November, December, you can have several good months of those leafy greens that are nice to have all the time at that time of the year.
So the next thing we want to talk about is our soil. Like we were kind of discussing before class, we have very poor soil conditions here. Our soil is basically dead. There is some iron and calcium in it, but because of the high pH, most of our plants can't intake that nutrients until we get that pH lower. So whether you use our 744 fertilizer, which actually has sulfur in it, we've done that specifically to help bring that pH level down. We have it. This is a slow release fertilizer that we put on to give our plants nutrients that they'll need because they can't absorb that from the soil. It's not like the soils in California where you can spit a seed out and the next day you have a tree sitting there. Or, the farmlands in the Midwest or any of those areas, because it is more difficult. So we do feed a lot. When we fertilize on the holidays just to try to make it easy for you folks. So we say, remember the holidays. So Easter, 4th of July, Halloween, and New Year's. New Year's is for evergreens only. The deciduous stuff doesn't need it during the wintertime because it has gone dormant. But we do fertilize often here. We also have a fruit and vegetable fertilizer. This is great for your vegetable beds. And since we just talked about them, now is the time to prep your vegetable beds if you're going to be planting a garden this year. You want to get some mulch or organic matter. Our premium mulch is in this orange bag. Our new stuff, it was supposed to be on the 15th. Obviously, it's the 20th. So it's a little bit late, but hopefully we'll get it soon. But mulch and the barnyard manure will give you a nice base for planting all those spring and summer vegetables in your garden.
So Michelle mentioned soil, and really for most of us, when you start digging in your yard, you'll probably find clay, rock, or sand.
Bless
Nothing
you.
that's too conducive to growing plants. And that's why the mulch, which is really a form of compost, is something that when we plant, we blend that in with whatever native soil you might have. So that's important because it introduces some organic matter and something to help that whatever you're planting get started. And you can top dress as well. And so it's not just for the vegetable garden, it's something that can go anywhere. You know, you're not going to necessarily improve your entire yard, but where you're planting, the mulch is a great ingredient to put into the ground to help everything get off to a good start.
Yeah, and it does help for those of us that have the hard clay soils because it helps break that up. It also helps the sandy and more granity soil that's out there because it gives you water holding power. So no matter where you live or what type of soil you have, you definitely want to use the mulch. You want to talk about watering? Or do you want me to talk about
Yeah,
water?
why don't you talk
Okay.
about water?
Watering here in Prescott is a little bit different. People think because we do get so hot that you need to water very often, and you really don't. Most drip systems we all use them. They work very well. For your trees, shrubs, and all of that stuff that is very well established, once a week watering will get you through as long as it's deep watering. So when I say deep watering, we're talking about the volume of water that the plant actually needs. So we don't have tap roots in our trees here because of the caliche layer that most of us have. So our roots go out and not down. So that being said, most root systems are in that 18 to 30 inch zone. So we need to make sure our water goes that deep every time we water. If you're watering 10 minutes, once or twice, 3 times a week, you're basically only watering about that much of your soil, and it never gets down here. So I'd rather you water a lot of water once a week than a little bit of water every so often, because your roots are way down here. It's like throwing a glass of water on it. It's not going to do a whole lot. So make sure your drippers are at the right setting for whatever size plant. If you have established trees that were in your yard before when you moved here, we use the rule of thumb for every foot of height, you want to use 1.5 gallons to 2 gallons of water. So just like I said, it's a rule of thumb. I usually add another 5 gallons on top of that just to be on the safe side because like I said, I'd rather do deeper less often than a little bit at a time. A little bit of a time, you end up with a lot of salt buildup on that top layer, and salt's not good for plants.
When people come in here and maybe they have a cutting in hand of a tree or a shrub and it's not doing very well, more often than not, it's a watering problem. And more often than not, it's too much water rather than not enough. And so it's important to try and determine how much water your plants are actually getting. Because people, you'll ask them, okay, so how much water does your plant get? And they'll say, well, it's on a drip system. Okay, well, how much water is that? They don't really know. So in terms of gallons, it's important. The emitters are 1 gallon per hour, 2, 3, whatever it might be. And so getting a handle on how much water, how frequently is really important. And people will come in and they'll say, well, look, the tree started looking sick, so I decided I would water it for 5 minutes every day. Michelle said, you're not doing the tree any favors at all. And I will tell people, why don't you try 1 hour every 10 days? And they sort of look at me like I'm crazy, but really, that's really more appropriate. When a tree is brand new or shrub, obviously you want to keep it moist when it's getting started. But for long term, it's kind of a tricky thing. There's no one size fits all answer, but basically, when you have a clay soil, the water is going to stay there, not drain out properly. But so watering is tricky, but there are kind of rules of thumb. And anytime that you get a plant here, you put it in the ground and you think it's not doing very well, you can bring a little cutting in here. We have a microscope that projects up onto a computer screen, and we can usually diagnose what the problem. It may or may not be water. It could be bugs. There are people that come in and say, there are no bugs in my yard, but something's on here. Then we put it on the microscope, and it looks like the freeway at rush hour, and they're in a state of shock. So that's my peach tree. That's okay. We can help you deal with that, But a lot of times these insects you can't really see them with the naked eye, but times 200 magnification down there, that's an incredible tool that we have, and it's something that's there. Whenever you come in here with a problem, we try and address it and try and help you solve it.
And so we do have, and I call them 3 seasons of watering. So we have our winter time, which is what we're in right now. So in the winter time, which is basically December through March, you're watering every 2 weeks. How do I water every 2 weeks? You drag out a hose. Because most of us shut off our drip systems, and it just kind of depends on your system itself. If you have a very technical one that needs to be drained, I don't expect you to turn it back on. If you can drain it yourself, then you can go ahead and use it. So it just depends on the system. So every 2 weeks, if we don't get any significant moisture, you want to water your plants, because wintertime is very, very dry here. It feels cold, but during the nice, warm, sunny days that we have, you need to go out and water your plants. Once March gets here and things start leafing out, we go back to the once a week watering. And that will take us through the end of April, early May. It just kind of depends on our season and how it changes, and when we get hot. From May until monsoon time, knock, knock, knock. Hopefully we'll get another one this year, because we do need the water. But from May until monsoon, once a week should do it, unless you're in the very porous soil and you drain very easily. Use your fingers, use a piece of rebar, pop it in the ground, pull it out. Someone really brought me a really good analogy. If you pop a piece of rebar in the ground and it pulls out and it's wet and sticky, think of it like baking a brownie. If it comes out wet and sticky, you don't need to water it. If it comes out clean, you need to water. So it's really simple to check and see if you need to water. And I always, until you figure out your property, always check. Because we can tell you to water once a week, but maybe you need to water more. Maybe you need to water less. Some people down in
Phoenix?
Where you just went.
Tucson.
No, the consultation you just did. My brain is gone. The big thing in PV.
Oh, Granville.
Granville. Duh. Sorry, my brain just went dead. You guys have very, very heavy clay soils. I thought I had clay soil. You guys have very heavy clay soil. So you might be watering every 10 days. It just depends on how your soil is. So be careful. If you have questions, that's what we're here for. That's what makes us different than everybody else. We're here about the information. We want you to be successful. So let us help you be successful.
So I don't mean to knock Granville, but that's a good example of a clay soil. So my sister-in-law lives there, and she asked me to bring her a new shrub. So I get down there with a little barberry, and she tells me, okay, 2 little shrubs have died here. Already, to me, that's a red flag. Why are we planting here again? So I pull out dead shrub number 2, pull it out of the ground. The root ball is dripping wet, right? And so then I look down at the hole in the ground, and it is this wall of terracotta, perfectly shaped. I mean, just not brown, funky mud. It looked like clay. And so I looked at that. I looked at this new plant. I said, Sue, you know what the best thing to grow right here is going to be? A boulder. Because you got 2 plants that died. don't bother with a third one because there's no drainage here because of this clay. I don't care. I got a big bag of mulch. We can pour it in there. Yeah, that'll help a little bit. So we agreed on that the boulder would be good. Problem was I couldn't move the boulder over there. So, but it's interesting that in the rest of the yard, everything is doing beautifully. The trees are huge. The shrubs look really healthy. But that little one spot, so that could be a key in your yard. If you're moved in somewhere and nothing's there, just be cautious and don't just kind of keep repeating the errors of this is not going to work here, because over there it might be great. And over there is not even that far away sometimes.
So if you are new to your property, we always suggest that you do a perk test. And what a perk test is basically you dig a hole for whatever plant, just get it started. If you're going to do a tree, you kind of want a fairly decent size hole, but fill it up with water. It should be gone within 4 to 8 hours. If it is, great. Go ahead and plant. If it is still sitting there after 8 hours, find another spot, because your tree will not, it will just never drain, and the roots will rot and you'll have problems all the time. So if that has to be your spot to plant a tree, make a raised bed, make a berm. You just need some sort of drainage to help that tree. Like I said, your root zone is in that 18 to 20 or 18 to 30 inches. So as long as you have enough space for that tree to go, you should be good to go. Your root zones usually follow your drip line. So if your tree is 20 feet, your root zone is probably 23, 25 feet out, because it just kind of follows that. But that's a guesstimate. Let me jump back to watering really quick. Take an inventory of your emitter system and your drip lines, because most of the properties that Doug and I have been to, the emitters are right next to the trunk. Your feeder roots are at the drip line. So if you're watering at the trunk, you're not giving the roots the water that they need. You want to water way out here. So yeah, you'll need a spaghetti tube or some sort of water system out there. So that's all I will say about water, and we will move on. I tend to get on a soapbox.
Except I want to tell one more story about the perk test. My favorite story about the perk test is a gentleman came in and we coached him about the perk test, and he wanted to plant a big tree there. He came back a couple weeks later and said, I dug this huge hole. I filled it with water. It still has water in it. I think I'm just going to get some trout and stock it, and it can become my fishing hole, basically. But, a little unusual for the water not to drain at all. But as Michelle said, it needs to drain quickly, or you're not going to have good drainage once the tree is in the ground.
So when you go to plant something here, planting is pretty much the same everywhere. So we're going to dig a hole twice as wide as the bucket that it's in. So if I was planting this, I'd dig the hole about this wide. Sorry, I don't have 3 hands, so I'll dig the hole this big. Go this way, and then we're going to make a bowl. So you want the edges kind of angled up and just as deep as it is in this pot. So you're only going to go this deep. It doesn't need to go any deeper. And then we're going to do 2/3 natural soil. It doesn't matter how crappy your soil is. This plant needs to figure out how to live there. So 2/3 natural soil, 1/3 mulch, and that will give you a good base to get root systems started. We usually fertilize when we plant, because like I said, the fertilizer is a slow release. It will not burn your plants. Basically, it's cottonseed meal and some other ingredients. So it's very low nutrients. But we want it that way so it can slowly work its way down and give the plants the nutrients that it needs. We use Root and Grow, which is our root stimulator. When you open this, it looks like molasses, and it kind of smells that way too. But this is full of all sorts of good micronutrients that help rejuvenate or rejuvenate the hair roots on our stuff or on the plant itself, and gets a good root base going. In the hotter summer months, it helps transplant shock as well. Great for houseplants too. I use this on my houseplants all the time. Root stimulator, the fertilizer, the mulch is the three things that we really want you to purchase when you buy a plant, because you're going to succeed with it. Next.
Animals?
Huh?
Animals in the yard?
Sure.
Okay. So one of the challenges of gardening here is that there are a lot of animals that can eat what you're growing in your yard. And it can be vegetables, it could be shrubs, and there are a lot of them. And they include deer and javelina. Those are among the worst, but there are gophers that dig tunnels in the ground. I once had gophers, eat all of my potatoes the day before I was ready to harvest them. They figured out before I did they were ready. And they're, birds and insects and so on. But I get a kick out of, sometimes I look at social media, I don't know why, but people have, pictures from their backyard at night of javelina. And there are a lot of, mid-sized little baby ones. And they say, aren't they adorable? I say, no, they're not adorable. They're hungry. They're always hungry. And they can come through your yard and just devastate it. And even if they don't like something, they can, in the process of digging it up and deciding they don't like it, they can kill the plants. So there are some things that you can do in terms of plant selection, and plant selection is important always. But generally speaking, if anything is herbal, and by that I mean lavender, rosemary, or sage, among other plants, they tend not to like those because that herbal taste and smell is too strong. On our website under Garden Talk, we have a list of plants that rabbits and deer don't like, and another list of plants that javelina don't like. Unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot of correspondence. So if you have both of those animals in your yard, you're in for a challenge. In my yard, it's javelina, and for me to be able to have a vegetable garden, I had to put in a wrought iron fence all the way around, and it's about this tall. And it's got mesh down at the bottom to keep the little animals out. So, this is not news. I mean, I see pictures of people with their home gardens, wherever it is, Colorado, Florida, there are animals everywhere. And they have lots of babies, and they're always hungry. And, we are nice enough to grow some food for them. Or you can try and grow around, what they like, and so when you move in somewhere, it's good to kind of figure out, maybe from talking with the neighbors, what are the pests, what usually comes in to try and eat your plants. And when we have whole classes, Ken teaches a class in gophers. He has a no tolerance for gophers, right? It's either my yard or the gopher's yard. Easy choice. Some people say, I like to catch and release them. That really means catch and return, because they're going to come back because you've been so nice to them. So why bother? I mean, either you have a yard or they have your yard. That's the way I look at it, right? Rabbits. I see rabbits all the time in the springtime. I see coyotes in my neighborhood at night. I'm thinking, what's wrong with you? I mean, there's plenty of rabbits.
Fat?
Yeah. You should be, these rabbits, they're the same way. They're hungry all the time. They even eat weeds. But anyway, so it's a challenge, but this is everything that we're talking about. It's not, meant to discourage you from gardening. It's just letting you know what some of the parameters are, how to deal with things, so that you can know what to expect. If you have plant, most of my yard is herbal plants and other shrubs that, according to the list that are prepared, the animals tend not to like them. It's not a guaranteed sort of thing. It's sort of like they're less likely. In the middle of winter, if they're starving, they'll eat almost anything. But deer and javelina will come right up to your front door, knock over your flower pots. They're not bashful at all. And there are lots of them, and they're hungry. Last week, I was driving up towards Thumb Butte, and get about halfway up there, there's 5 javelinas across the street. Then I round the corner, and a deer crosses. I'm thinking, I think I better slow down. I don't feel like, totaling my car and killing an animal. So we kind of took it easy the rest of the way. But they're just a fact of life here.
I'm going to pass out a planting guide. I think I have plenty. If not, I do have more down front, or we're also going to send it out as part of the newsletter that you're going to get. So I'll start you guys over here. With the pests, gophers are usually the hardest part, and we can help you with that. That's kind of a whole other class. But gophers have 3 litters every year. So you kind of look at that and say, oh, no wonder I have so many holes. So it's one of those that you have to stay on top of, or you're going to lose the battle. Fencing for the javelina and deer. There are times to be strategic with that stuff. Wintertime is when they're foraging. Usually in the summertime, there's plenty of stuff, especially during our monsoon season, and we have a lot of rain. There's plenty of grass and things for them to eat. The deer get dangerous to trees in the fall and winter because of their rutting with their horns. So protect your stuff. If you know you have them, you can put a cage around your trees that will protect them until they get big enough where they're not nibbling so much. It'll protect your bark and all of those things. So with that being said, I think we're going to do a little bit of show and tell just to kind of show you some of the plants that you can grow here. This is just a small piece of what we have. Like Ken said earlier, we have had 4 different semis here in the last 2 weeks. So plenty of new stuff. We have some new items that are new to our nursery. They will do just fine here. So we're really excited about some of that. So Doug, you want to start on that end and we'll kind of go back and forth. We can pan. He's going to pan to you so you don't have to pick it up. Go, Vanna, go.
So this is a Spartan juniper. We often think of junipers as ground covers, and we have plenty of those. But there are also junipers that are trees, and most of them are going to get to be maybe 10 to 12 feet high, 4 to 5 feet wide. So they're nice, but they're not huge. And it's evergreen, it's low maintenance. Sometimes folks come in and they say, "Oh, I'm allergic to juniper. I really need to stay away from them." Most of the junipers that we get in here are not allergenic. That's been sort of bred out of them. The real problem junipers are the alligator junipers that grow wild here, and they're huge, and there are lots of them. So it's not to say that you might not have problems with junipers, but it's not likely to be one of these.
And all the plants that we have are all, every plant here has some pollen of some sort, but they're not like the alligator junipers. They're not like the alligator junipers in the mountains where they kind of go up and smoke and release all of that pollen. So
next item here is an Oregon green pine. We have lots of nice evergreen trees, Austrian pines, spruces, these Oregon greens. I like them in that the needles are kind of densely packed together. They're not like some needles that sort of fall over the place. So that's a nice tree. This is
just one more quick thing about the Oregon green. It's my favorite, so I like to talk about it. It is one of the smaller, when I say smaller, more narrow trees. So if you have a small yard, it only gets 10 to 15 feet wide. So that's 7.5 feet on both sides. So if you have a smaller yard, it will fit nicely. We've really focused on some more narrow trees, so look for those, and we can try to help you for the smaller yards.
We have a number of redbuds here already. The Oklahoma one is very popular, but there's an eastern redbud, and there's something new over there that Michelle's bringing over that's called a flamethrower redbud. And this is this new for us this year?
This is new for us. So last year when we went to the Far West show, we actually saw this one full leafed out. It was like, what is that tree? And Amy and I were so excited about this tree. Of course, they told us that we wouldn't be able to get them because they were several years out, but we were lucky enough. I think we got 10 out there. Which is really cool about this is that it is a unique color. The leaves are kind of lime green and orange. So it kind of takes its name as flamethrower. But it will still have the pink, pretty pink blossoms early in the spring. And then it just has this gorgeous foliage on the all summer long. Gorgeous fall foliage as well. It'll go back to the orange, yellow for the fall. Flamethrower.
So yesterday, these folks were in here looking at Red Buds, and they saw the flamethrower, and they really liked it. They said, oh, I got to go back and remove the stump and prep the ground and so on. So don't tell anybody about this flamethrower. I mean, we had about 8 of them there. So I didn't tell you about this, right? But it's really a neat tree. And one of the things that's great about working here is that we're always bringing in new stuff. You know, Michelle and Amy, they go to these shows, they go to farms, and they see new and interesting plants because they're always being developed. And so, you know, I think we've got a great selection and great variety of plants. So Redbud is always a good plant.
They're going to get the same size as the regular red buds, about 15, 20 feet tall and about that wide. Eastern or Oklahoma red bud is another red bud that kind of stays in that smaller 15-ish size range. There's probably 6-8 different varieties of red buds that we have. Some of the Merlot red bud actually has red maroony leaves. The Oklahoma, Eastern, all have that green, but they have heart-shaped leaf, which is kind of cool about that tree. And they can be grown in the full sun as well.
Back to my sister-in-law in Granville, she's got a couple of Merlot red buds that are not even that tall, and their shape is kind of like an umbrella shape. And so the fact that you can kind of reach up there and prune without having to get on a ladder is great. So they're taller ones, smaller ones, different colors, great variety. So then let's move on to this one. Let's see if I can drag this out.
Get them out.
Okay, this is an Arizona cypress. It's a native tree. It's really one of my favorites because I love the color, and I like the sort of shaggy, rugged Southwest look about it. Now, some people come in and say, no, I want a little pyramid. I want a Christmas tree. I want something symmetrical. That's not your tree if that's how you feel about it. But I've seen these that are growing in lots. Doesn't seem like anybody takes care of them. I see one, they're all over the place, and they're wonderful shade and privacy trees. They're good windbreaks, and I just
They smell really good.
Yeah. They get to be about 20 feet tall or so.
This one's a little bit smaller, about 15. The regular Arizona cypress is more of that teardrop Christmas tree shape. Both are native and very drought tolerant. So basically, like I said, once a week watering is all you need. If you keep to that schedule, you'll get your height that you want. A lot of these trees, the regular Arizona, most people kind of stop watering them once they get after 5 years. But if you continue to water, the tree's going to get enormous. So keep watering, take care of your trees. They'll stay healthier that way for you.
Should I bring out this
Sure.
Euonymus?
Yeah, we'll put it here. Ken, we're going to move back over here.
So this is a Euonymus. There are about 20 different kinds of Euonymus in this big family, and we usually have 5 or 6 of them at any given time. They are little evergreen shrubs. They almost always have variegated color in the leaves.
This is it's actually called a variegated. This one, there's smaller variety that's called the golden Euonymus that stays in that 3 to 4 foot. This one actually gets in that 6 to 8, so it's a little bit bigger if you have a bigger space for it. It is evergreen, so a lot of people move here and say, it's just so ugly in the wintertime. This is a great plant to have in the wintertime because it does have the color that will brighten up your landscapes during those winter ugly months.
I have the golden one that Michelle mentioned. It's a little bit smaller, but it has a little more, it has a really deeply saturated yellow gold. And it's on the corner. I live on a corner, so it's out there. It stands out. I can spot that about, I don't know, half a block away when I'm driving home. And I'm thinking, if I ever have a senior moment, I forget where I live, I'm going to look for that gold. That's going to be my beacon to find my way home. But, this is what you get all year round. It doesn't drop its leaves. And sometimes you get more green, less yellow. It shifts a little bit, but it's always there with this color. What's next?
Let's do the smaller juniper. We'll just kind of work our way this way. Yeah. So this is a blue star juniper. Like Doug was saying earlier, there are a variety of upright junipers and ground cover junipers. This one is going to get in that about 2 foot, and then it spreads out about 6 wide. This one has the blue-green foliage, which is really neat. Has a little bit of different needles to it than your regular junipers. There's the Calgary carpet, the buffalo juniper that are both green. Both of those stay less than a foot tall and spread out to that 6 to 8 wide. Great ground covers. The dwarf garden juniper has more of this type needle leaf to it, but also stays in that foot tall and spreads 6 to 8 wide. So a lot of different options for you if you are looking for a juniper. We also have one that's called Guernsey green because it is nice green color like grass, but that one actually does pretty well in the shade, which is why we brought it in for some of those shadier spots that you need to pop a green in as well. I'm going to skip to the rose. Roses do very, very well here, depending on when you guys got here, which is really amazing. You think of us as a high desert location, and roses do spectacularly. We have dormant roses, and that's what we call these because there's no leaf on them at all. They are in peat pots, so you actually just plant this whole entire thing. It's just basically cardboard that'll disintegrate over time. When you go to plant this, I always recommend that you cut an X on the bottom and then score the sides several times and then put it in the hole. That way it can disintegrate a little bit faster for you. Also, it'll give those roots, because once they start popping, and you can see the little leaf nodes starting to pop right now. And these just came in on Monday of this week. So they're coming in fast, and because we've been so warm, everything's trying to leaf out. Yes, they can. They can be planted right now. Great time to get them in because they are dormant. If you plant something that's dormant, like all the deciduous trees right now, they don't go through that shock like they do when they're fully leafed out. Not that they can't handle that, but it's less stressful for your plants to get them in. The roses that I have now are just the small piece of the puzzle. End of April, we get a truckload of 1,000 roses, so the place will be full of roses at the end of April. Gorgeous time. The parking lot's full. Yes, ma'am. Her question was how do roses do in planters, and they do very, very well. The one thing that I have found that most people tend to overwater them when they're in planters, so just make sure that they need water before you water them. And roses are very drought tolerant. Most people think they need a lot of water, but typically once a week, that's all they need, as long as it's the volume.
So I'm going to just mention, just continuing with roses. I have to admit, I love roses. I have a lot of roses in my yard, and I wish I had more if I had the space. But the day that Michelle mentioned, when this big truckload of roses arrived, people will ask about it. When is it coming? When are they coming, right? They're all excited about it. And on the day that they arrive, we have like a traffic jam in the parking lot. I mean, people are trying to get the roses off the truck. We haven't even taken them off. And then we spread them out on the edge of the parking lot, and we always have a conversation. How do we organize them? By color or by variety or just whatever, you know? I mean, and it's just, you can walk into the parking lot and there's this fragrance of roses everywhere. And then you have rows and rows, and we're unloading them. And people are grabbing them and putting them on their cart. So it's really, to me, it's a great time of year. And
It's exciting.
It's exciting, and people come in and they just fall in love with the roses, and they buy 2 or 3. And I can just stand out there and be clipping them away. People come over. It's like an instant icebreaker. And if they brought their dog, it's even better. Right? So
We love dogs.
Yeah, it's a very dog-friendly place here. But the roses do very well. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a handout or some information on your website about how to get
So
I think we do. It should be there. But if you have any other questions, I can try to answer them after the class if you want to get together. Roses, we do prune them towards the end of this month, early March. So if you need to give your roses a little bit of prune, go ahead and do so. Roses can get very large. If you want them that way, go ahead and keep them that way. Basically, we do prune this time of year. We try to wait until spring to do it instead of the fall, because we do get cold during December and January. So if you do prune in the fall, you may get some more dieback, and then you'll have to prune them again just to get that off. I'm lazy. I only want to do it once, so I just wait until March to prune my stuff.
So this lady had a question.
Okay, so basically everything I've shown you so far, her question was how much sunlight do they need? Everything that we've shown you so far is all full sun plants. I've got this section over here that's going to be shade, but everything that we've shown so far is sun. Roses need 6 or more hours of sunshine in order to bloom. If you put it in a shady spot that doesn't get 6 hours, the plant might do okay, but you won't get the blooms that you would get in the sun.
So one of the things about roses, as Michelle mentioned, they do really well here. They're quite hardy. You don't have to mulch them the way maybe you had to do if you lived in the Midwest. In fact, my roses seem to hang on to their leaves way into winter, even when they finish flowering. But mine were flowering into November, and they started in May. As I mentioned, there were so many flowers that, my wife and I would get on opposite sides of the roses to start deadheading. So they had a really good year. But I always kind of cut them back, and March is a good time of year to do that. And you can look at YouTube videos on how to do that. And we do have some literature about caring for roses, but it's pretty maintenance-free. They're likely to get bugs, we get aphids and thrips. Everybody loves them. And if you have deer, they'll probably eat the flowers. And so, but Javelina don't like roses, so I'm okay in my yard with that. But roses are a big attraction. And when you come here in April, if you come and see them, it's quite an event. They're hard to resist, really.
So we did get a bunch of lilacs in this week. You want me to bring this down? This one's called Centura. This one's a new one. I've never heard of this one before, but it's a double blue, which is really pretty. And it's your normal 6 to 8 foot lilac. So I'm expecting great things out of this one. So they're just now starting to get their leaves. We have the bloomerang, which is a rebloomer lilac, which is really cool. So instead of just getting your springtime lilac fix, you can get another blossom, usually towards the end of July, early August. So lilacs, forsythias, anything that blooms in the spring, you don't want to prune until after they bloom. So once they bloom, then you can do your pruning for those flowering shrubs. Yeah. Huh? No. Her question was, can you prune it now? Don't, or you're going to cut all your flowers off, because those buds are your flowers. So if you prune it now, you're going to cut all of that off. So wait until after it blooms to do that.
So if you're looking for winter color, here you go, the pansies, violas, the Johnny jump ups, those are all great, and they'll flower all winter. And they don't mind if it snows, hails, they come back all the time. I had a whole bunch of pots of pansies in my front porch, and it snowed. There was about that much snow on them. My neighbor came by and said, "Too bad about your pansies." And I said, "Don't worry about them. They love this weather." And in a couple of days, the snow had melted. They were soaked, and they came back and did really well. And these will, in the wintertime, there's not a whole lot that you can get that has color in your yard. So these are hanging baskets. You can put them in pots. They usually start to slow down when the weather gets hot. I've heard some people say they move them into a cooler, shady corner and maybe keep them going. I usually like to just take them out, and by then we have beautiful summer flowers that Michelle has brought in, and so those replace them. But this is a good all winter long.
Yeah, and that's what we were kind of talking about, that we have all sorts of different seasons, and we do get flowers that bloom all winter long. So your pansies, your snapdragons, your stock, all of those things will keep you in color all winter long. Javelinas love these, just like we do. So put them up, hanging baskets they can't get to.
But it's really anecdotal, because for years and years, I'd have multiple pots of pansies in my front porch, and the Javelina would come through, and I guess they never discovered them until they finally did. And then I came out one morning, and it was just a complete mess, because if they hadn't eaten them, they'd dig them up, and the plants were, just kind of butchered. And so I said, okay, enough of this. I'll just wait till summertime and get something that I like. But people will say, well, they've been fine in my yard. And they were in mine until they weren't. So. Yeah, whatever's left over. That's why I got tired of going out there in the morning and sweeping up potting soil. I said, okay. Sometimes you just have to say, okay, I give up. You can have these. I understand you like them. I won't be growing them anymore unless you can get them on a hanging pot or somewhere where they're safe.
All right. Forsythias. Forsythias is a shrub. We have several different varieties of the forsythia, so we have one that will fit your yard. It just depends on how big you want it to grow. The magical gold, which is what this guy is, you can see he's starting, or she is starting to bloom. Gorgeous yellow flowers, all for probably a month, I guess. They'll bloom, and then they'll just get green foliage. This one will get about 5 by 5. We have also the northern that gets 8 to 9 feet. So if you're looking for something that's taller, there's that one as well. So like I said, we'll find one that'll match what you're looking for.
What's next?
Let me do the raspberry. I'll get the raspberries out of here.
That's a heavy one.
Fruit does really well too. This is a fall gold raspberry. Beautiful yellow berries. We have red raspberries, the heritage. Blueberries are in, grapes are in, fruit trees are in. I have like 8 different types of peaches. We have apples, pears, plums, cherries. So if you're looking to start a small orchard or just a few trees, we have them right now. Spring is a great time to get these in. And raspberries, blackberries, boysenberries all do really well in the full sun. Okay. Peonies, we did kind of touch on peonies earlier, but peonies are in. Great time to get them put in. This one's the Adolphe Rousseau. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right. But it is a nice pink one. It seems like all I got in was a bunch of pinks and a white. All my red ones got canceled. But great time to get them in because they're just now starting to bud out, just like the trees. If you get them in now, they don't go through the shock. You'll still get blossoms this year. So get them in now if you're looking for those beautiful flowers. These can handle the full sun. They can also handle part shade. So wherever you want to put them, probably a good spot for them. Yes, they will grow in a pot very well.
So one of the things that is nice about
Just an hour? Oh, we are running over. Okay.
so one word about peonies, they're wonderful plants that they've been around forever. That they're ancient plants, and people will pay big bucks to have the cut flowers flown to their wedding in Hawaii. And I remember going to a garden consultation, and these folks didn't know what these plants were, and they were peonies. They said, "We're going to take these out because they're not very nice." And no, don't do that. People come in and they're passionate about these, and when we're sold out, they're unhappy. So I said, okay, just get rid of that scrub oak and encourage these to grow because they're wonderful, wonderful plants.
So I don't know if we're still live or not, but I have two things to share with you guys before you take off. This is a huge rhododendron that we brought in. Amy and I, like I said, we were up in Oregon for the Far West show, and we saw these at the show, and it was like, we got to get some of these. So beautiful rhododendron. These will get about 6 feet tall. So obviously this one's very mature. This is a shady plant. So a little morning sun would be perfect for it. They come in a variety of different colors. There's 3 or 4 different colors. And I have smaller ones too, if you can't handle this size. But like I said, we were very, very impressed with these guys.
So one of the things about the rhododendrons is there are 2 things they really need to be happy in life. One of them is shade, and the other one is an acidic soil. So if you're going to plant it in the ground, you want to add soil sulfur, which will help acidify your soil because of what we talked about earlier. Our soils are very alkaline, but this, you see there's a hydrangea picture here. Anyway, important to keep in mind for any of those acid-loving plants.
Blueberries is one of those. Your rhododendrons, your azaleas, all of those love that acid. So in the amount that you'll get out of our 744 is not enough to bring it down to where the rhodies and azaleas are happy. So 2 more plants and I will, yeah? Oh, absolutely. I don't bring anything in that will not survive here. No. So
We wish.
I guess we should have hit on that. We are zone 7 here. So when you're looking at the hardiness zones, and these are USDA hardiness zones, not the Southwest zones, because that's a whole different ballgame. So our hardiness zone is the zone 7. And then a lot of these plants are zone 5s. So the higher the number, the more heat it can take. The lower the number, the more cold it can take. So we try to get those that can handle the cold because we do get cold. We have to be careful, like on our spruces, because they don't like hot weather. So they're only tolerable to zone 8. So you can't take a blue spruce down to Phoenix. It will not work there. So that's kind of how that zone thing works. Okay, Twisty baby, locust. This is a really cool tree, even deciduous, because of its twists and turns. It's one of my favorite ornamental trees. It has pretty yellow flowers in the springtime and then the green foliage in the fall and winter. But I just love the curly twists and turns on it. It's a twisty baby. Locust.
Locust.
Yeah? Sure. Is that better? Okay. You bet. I have different sizes of this one. I like this one because it's got branches all the way up. There are others that already have a canopy started, which is kind of cool. And then lastly, and then I can open it up to questions because I know we kind of missed that. This is a twisted apple, which sounds funny, but they have actually grafted 2 apples and they've twisted the trunks up. So this is a Honeycrisp and a Gala apple mixed together. So you've got the 2 pollinators that you would need. But we saw these again in Oregon and thought they were the greatest things going. So something new for fruit trees this year. Okay, let's open it up to questions and we'll try to answer them for you.
Yes, I'll answer that. So the question was, do we come out and answer questions and make suggestions for people in their yards? And we do. I was just hoping that maybe we could plug that. Michelle and I, either one of us, both of us can come out to your yard. And what we do is kind of walk through the property and sort of brainstorm ideas. Okay, you have something over here, you should do this to prune it, but you could add this or that. So it's kind of a brainstorming session. Really works best if you have, kind of an existing yard. It's not so much brand new and you put a wall over here and this is where the irrigation goes. It has to do mostly with plants that we have here. So we can do that and spend about an hour. Then we schedule a time when, when you can come back here and look at what we've suggested. Michelle and I have ways of, showing you suggestions in writing, and then you can come in and look at them and select anything if it appeals to you. But that's an ongoing thing. We call it a garden consultation. And we do them all the time. Yeah, it's a $200 fee for us to come out. But then when you come back here, you get 20% off on all the live merchandise that you buy. So if you buy a couple trees, it starts to add up pretty quickly. But we're here to help you and we'll walk you around. People will come in, I'll say, look at that great tree right there. And they'll say, oh, I don't like that. Okay, what about plan B? I love it. And so that's sort of the process we go through.
Yes, ma'am.
Which items can be container?
So her question is which items can be container grown, and it just kind of depends on the size of the container. So you want whatever you're going to put in there to not get much bigger than the container that it is. So if you start with a large pot that's like this size, you can actually put a fruit tree in it. You're just going to keep that fruit tree smaller. And it'll do just fine in there. If you want a shrub or a rose that gets 3 to 4 foot, you can put it in a hot pot about this size and it'll do just fine.
I have a question. When you're fertilizing or adding nutrients, do you have those on the drip line?
Yeah, her question was fertilizing and how to do it. So yeah, you do fertilize around the drip line. If you're doing it in a pot, you can just kind of sprinkle it in on top of it and it'll eventually go down. Yeah.
I noticed you have a yellow column right there.
I do.
What are the seasons for that and how do you grow?
Columbines, her question was, can columbines grow here? They do grow here very well. They are a shadier plant here. And now is the time, usually, we've had a very unusual February, so we've been very warm. So this one's yours. If you have them in your yard, they're probably not even starting to pop up yet. But usually spring is when they bloom. And then I'll have a whole bunch of these coming up soon. Anybody else? Yes. Oh, that's a nasty sucker. His question was eradicating cat claw. So what I would do with dog claw, cat claw. It's actually cat claw because it scratches like crazy. But what I would do is cut it down, leave a little bit, and use a paintbrush with the brush killer and have that go in, let it soak in for a day or two, cut another piece off, do it again. And after a couple of times, you'll get rid of those roots. Do you have any other besides that? Our boss came back.
The brush stump killer, take it off. Sometimes I'll take a drill and I'll drill a hole. It's a bigger one. Drill a hole so we'll receive some more of it.
Anything else? All right, guys, thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. If you guys have any other questions, Doug and I will hang around and we'll get back to it. Monday's not supposed to be bad, but my phone said Tuesday about 9 o'clock it's supposed to start snowing. I'm okay with that if you want to walk around in the snow. If you don't, then I do have Monday open if you want to switch it.
Monday, and then if the winter's bad on Monday.
Yeah, as far